I'm Dr. Mary Linda Sarah, and today we are going to talk about how to build more intimacy in your relationship. I'm going to wait a minute or two so everyone can get a pencil and a piece of paper to take the little tests that are included. You can also stop the video to take them at any point in time. Next. So we should start with who I am. I was married for 25 years to my late husband. We went together to the Masters and Johnson Institute on several occasions in the late 70s. They were considered real pioneers in the field of sexuality and sex therapy. I've been in the field of human sexuality since 1978, and I have studied with most of the leaders of the field during that time. For my students at Virginia Tech, I was a dinosaur because I had studied with Masters and Johnson and they didn't know who they were. At some point in teaching, the HBO series on Masters and Johnson debuted. Now they had a frame of reference and I felt validated. Next. I started in 1978 to work under a psychiatrist's license. This involved taking sex histories in very detailed format and usually took 3 hours with the woman and 1.5 hours with the man. I think in the first 5 years, I probably took about 800 sex histories. At the time, what surprised me was how almost everyone used the word intimate to describe a sexual encounter. For example, we were intimate last night. Over time, that has changed and the word sex has become more common. For example, couples will say, we had sex last night. But if you ask people to define intimacy and sex, they usually don't see a difference. So what exactly is intimacy? Next slide. As you can see here, Masters and Johnson lists 7 as their basic components of intimacy. Since these are translatable into behaviors, I've chosen to use theirs. After 40 years of clinical practice, reading and continuing education, I have added 6. Next slide. Caring is the beginning of an intimate relationship. Essentially, we care in varying degrees for acquaintances, friends, good friends, and our partner. These different types of relationships are based on the amount of self-disclosure and the time you spend together. At the beginning of the relationship with your partner, you spent a lot of time together, maybe even to the exclusion of others, and talked and disclosed endlessly. But over time, it does change. Where are you today? Next slide. These are 2 small quizzes. They're easy to do at home. Just draw a line and mark where you are about caring and self-disclosure. Again, you can stop the video to do all the little exercises. Next slide. Here are 2 more quick ones. Just put down your first response. Now to score them, I had you going for a minute, didn't I? But as a professor, I just can't help myself sometimes. Next slide. See what I did here? I changed the format a bit. It's meant to keep you curious about what may be coming next. So sharing our experiences as well as our wants feelings, and thoughts are really important to deepening a relationship. However, if it is forced, it doesn't help. Here's an example. If I like running and I want you to try it, so you may still like running also, there are options. If, on the other hand, I say to you, I like running and you must learn to run, so we will have an activity we can do together, the relationship doesn't improve. So take this little test about activities. Next slide. So the sign of an intimate relationship is that we don't do everything together, but rather each of us has both our own friends and activities as well as our together ones. Couples do need space apart. Remember how you felt during COVID? Trust is a sign of an intimate relationship. And let me give you an example. If I say I'm going to be home at 9, and I am, trust develops for my partner. I become trustworthy. On the other side, if they say they will be home at 9, and they are, trust develops for me. Yeah, I can hear y'all saying, what about 9:10? Well, that will depend on you, your relationship, and the situation. I don't think there's a right answer there. Next slide. Here is another little quiz. There's no right or wrong answer, just yours. Just mark it someplace on the line. Next slide. This slide is about commitment, and I think it explains the nature of commitment really well. So I'll give you a moment to read it. So by this time, you know the drill. How committed are you? Not at all. Some. Totally. Next slide. Honesty is probably the hardest component to define or work with over my 40 years as a psychotherapist. As you can see, there is a continuum of honesty. The expression TMI, which has become very popular recently, expresses the reaction to too much honesty. But then again, there can be too little. It happens when people are afraid to tell each other what they think, feel, or want, or perhaps a partner is more introverted. Then again, each of us keeps things private, not secretive. For example, I don't tell my weight to almost anyone. But then you hit the last category where a person is deceitful. They may be able to look you straight in the face and lie to you, or they may not be able, or they may not tell you the important details of a situation. Either way, it is deceitful. No test, just a question. How do you see yourself in relationship to honesty? Next slide. This is a quote from Alfred Adler, who was a colleague of Freud's. His work, which ran parallel to Freud's, focused more on the family and the family relationships. So he is called the father of family therapy. Next slide. As you can see from this slide, there are 3 steps to having an empathic response. As you read these steps, think about your ability to empathize. As you might expect, a lot of women get stuck in step 2, whereas men get stuck in step 1. What step do you get stuck in? Next slide. Tenderness is an important variable in a relationship. It can be shown through words or actions. As might be expected, men have trouble with this category using words due to social conditioning. A lot of men prefer touch over words. What's your style? Next. So this is the end of the components that Masters and Johnson have put forward, and we've identified the behaviors that can accompany each of the behaviors. These are the additional components I have added over the years based on studying, reading, and attending workshops. Next slide. John Gottman, who is a very famous couples researcher, said that a stable and good relationship is characterized by a ratio of 5-to-1 interactions. This means that there are 5 positive interactions for every negative interaction or expression of feeling. If you want to change the relationship in the ratio in your relationship, use this exercise. It's a wonderful way to let your partner know that you see them and appreciate them. I'm not really sure where I found this exercise or even if I made it up. I would like to credit Richard Stewart and Harville Hendrix for this concept of caring days. You do it no matter how you feel at the moment, because it sends a message that you care. I've laid out the steps very concretely on the slide. All you have to do is follow them. Next slide. I must credit Jack Annan, a famous sex therapist, for this concept of date nights which are fun. It's really important for couples to have fun, and there are a variety of ways to have fun on a date night. If none of these examples hit you in the sweet spot, you can go on the web and look for dating suggestions. I found one that even said for older couples. It's your choice, young at heart or old physically. I don't really care. Next slide. I must credit Harville Hendrix for the idea of belly laughing. And you know when you are belly laughing, there's no question about it. There can also be a less intense form called chuckling. You look at the cartoons, somebody says something funny, something hits you the wrong way, and you chuckle at it. Lastly, there's smiling. And smiling, as everyone knows, is the best way to start out your day. So I want to talk a little bit about belly laughing. I recently went to a Jimmy Buffett tribute band and a Billy Joel one. I remember the excitement of going and the high energy in the room. Both times I left feeling extremely glad that I had attended. The kind of laughter that was so spontaneous is really important to growing our relationships. New experiences goes with the idea that there's both anxiety and excitement. And sometimes we think of anxiety and don't realize we could call it excitement. It's really important to be trying new things that potentially could be disasters, but may wind up with our laughing at ourselves and at the situation. Or if it turns out well, we laugh at the situation because it's funny. As I mentioned before, going to a tribute band can be a really good example of a new experience that makes you feel good. Next slide. Okay, a vision statement. It is well known across many domains, especially in work, that a company having a vision statement helps people know what they're trying to attain. Couples should also have vision statements. It's really important that the couple does this both individually and together. So it is very much essential for you to have time to think about what you want and your partner to think about what they want. Next slide. So this is how you do it. You're going to make up your own list first. Do not make a list of things that you think your partner will like. Make a list of the things you would like. This is just for you. After you put the list together, you can start looking at the things that are similar. In conclusion, I presented the key areas of Masters and Johnson regarding their components of intimacy. In addition, mine call for vulnerability. You can't belly laugh unless you feel safe with your partner. You can't try out new experiences if you're going to feel judged. You can't have a shared vision if you feel like you're living with a roommate. Hopefully, all the quizzes and concepts have helped you determine what is present and what is missing from your relationship. I hope that you have enjoyed this presentation as well as the quizzes.